Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell Killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. My good friend Sixties joined me earlier today to break down all the action from round 23 as the Parramatta Eels snuck home against the St. George Illawarra Dragons. We were live at Jack's Bar and Grill at Parramatta Leagues, the home of the Parramatta Eels, and I'll bring that to you very, very shortly. But before we do, a quick shout out to the sponsors of the show, Big Swing Golf, North Mead, and Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Nerlin and Parramatta.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. Well, we got the job done today. Maybe not the way that we wanted to, but we still got the job done. So how about a round of applause for getting the job done and getting 2 points? We're the Cumberland Throw. We'll be with you for about 30-40 minutes just to do a wrap-up of today's match. We'll leave the TV on there so you can keep track of the Raiders and the Tigers. We're going to cheer on the Tigers to maybe get over the Raiders. We can hope against hope, can't we? Can we hope against hope that the Tigers get over the Raiders so that maybe we can just edge up a little bit on them? We've got to keep our season going as long as we possibly can. But anyway, today we had the Eels getting up over the Dragons, 26-20. It kept us on the edge of our seats. John, can you take us through some of the key stats?
Yeah, well, starting with the scoreboard, the Parramatta Eels racked up 26 points with Bryce Cartwright getting the match-winning try in the 70th minute. Arthur Miller-Stevens scoring on debut as the first try scorer. Bryce getting his first try in the 11th minute with Sean Russell and Junior Barlow tacking on. The St. George Illawarra Michaeli Ravalawas, they scored 16 points. Zach Lomax adding on 4.
Yeah, so it was the Eels against Ravalawa today.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He got 4 on the board there, and it felt like he could have got 5 or 6 as well. He had a whale of a game on that right edge. But going through the team stats quickly, Eels just ahead on possession, 51-49%. Time possession actually in favour of the Dragons by a few seconds. Somehow the Eels got to 83% completion, mate. I have no idea how. It felt like they were dropping the ball every other set after a hot start.
You know, there was very similar stats at half-time where the Dragons were struggling with effective tackles, with missed tackles. They did have an advantage of time in possession, and it felt like we were losing the ruck really badly in that first half, and yet they far exceeded the Eels' missed tackles and ineffective tackles. It was hard to put a finger on it.
Well, talking about losing the ruck, it was 9 line breaks to 5 in favour of the visitors. The Eels having problems in that front line of defence. Managed to mitigate some of the damage, obviously, on the scoreboard, but the Dragons still putting on 20 points. In terms of the defence, like you mentioned, the Dragons actually were worse defenders. 85% effective tackle rate. The Parramatta's 86.7%. They have more missed and ineffective tackles. So Parramatta cleaner on defence, even though it didn't always feel that way in terms of the general run of play. Eels were a bit more efficient in terms of errors and penalties conceded. A rare win for the penalty count there for the Eels, 6-2. So you take those ones, mate. And like on the balance of things as a team, the line break's the big sort of standout thing there. Both teams equal on offloads. You don't always see that. The Eels tend to out-offload their opponents, but the Dragons have a couple of decent offloaders themselves, and the likes of Zach Lomax and some of those forwards. At an individual level, Quinton Gufferson led the way for 181 metres on the ground. You had a couple of good performances. Junior Barlow, 180 as well. 160 from Bryce Cartwright, or should I say Dr. Bryce, Mr. Cartwright. Bit of a Jekyll and Hyde game there for the big fella. But yeah, statistically the Eels decent. The eye test though, there was plenty left to be desired. They got the win, which is what you want, but there's still things to improve ahead of a trip up to Brisbane.
So today we had the debut of Arthur Miller-Stevens. What do you think, people? Do you think he's got a future? Artie, out on the wing? Yeah, a good try to start off the game. There was obviously Ravalawa got a few tries, and BA swapped the wing that Artie was on for the second half. But to be fair, I don't think any other option that we had on the wing was going to stop those particular tries that Ravalawa scored today.
Ravalawa got his flowers against Sean Russell as well. So It's just a case of a big hulking winger doing what he does best. And he had a whale of a game, like I said earlier. But it's always great to see a rookie come in, get that try on debut, have a good solid game where he had some mistakes he's going to learn from and be better for. But I just love the energy and the team rallying around the young kid having that first experience in the NRL. You could see they were pumped for him.
Yeah, just to give people a bit of a background on Arthur Miller-Stephen, Artie was playing in the Parramatta Eels SG ball team last year, playing some fullback. Later in the year, he moved up into the Jersey Flegg team, played a mix of fullback and wing there. The start of this year, he was in Jersey Flegg, and then a couple of rounds in, he was moved up to New South Wales Cup, playing fullback there. And in one of those matches, he busted his shoulder, and he was out for about 9-10 weeks. So he's been back, about 4 or 5 weeks, something like that.
About bang on.
Yeah, and obviously the Eels are in dire straits when it comes to outside backs at the moment. It's something that I did write about through the week with our roster. So they've given the young bloke his opportunity. Now, to put this in perspective, because Artie was outside the top 30 and he only was part of training as part of the New South Wales Cup team in this latter part of the season, he's probably only had about half a dozen training runs with the top grade squad. So he's coming in there really, really inexperienced. It's not ideal, and I think that says a lot for young Artie with how he played today, was that minimal amount of time that he's had. Now, when did the Eels know they were going to use him this week? He was part of training on Tuesday, and all the boys started to get around him on Tuesday. And can I just say, from watching what training was like Wednesday and Friday, they really got around him. They really got around him big time. And I should just correct that, not Tuesday training, Wednesday training. So they really got around him. Everything that he was doing, they were encouraging him, going over there, cheering him when he was getting things right there at training. Bit of advice if things weren't quite going right. Had a really good session at the captain's run on Friday. And you'll probably see footage of the jersey presentation to him on Eels Media. And after they do the jersey presentation, they get the person making the player making the debut to tell a funny story. And watching the fellas there, and they're all sitting around on the grass like school children listening to Artie tell his story. And it was I thought it was really indicative of how much they'd embraced him as part of the team, and making him feel like he was a really important squad member, which indeed he was today. So how would you rate his performance, his debut, John?
It's hard to assign a grade or a value to it, but like I said, I really loved the energy. He made some errors. They're going to go get that on tape and make him a better player for it. But yeah, he just brought that youthful sort of vibe to the team that you love to see. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to see him in open space 60s. We know he's got some wheels. He can fly.
Artie would be the fastest player in the club. So if anyone was wondering what sort of pace he's got, yeah, easily the fastest player in the club.
Yeah, so we didn't get to see that tonight. Did get to see him score his first try in the NRL, first try of the game. So that's going to be a memory that stays with him forever. And for that, I'm really big on it. So I love what the selection brought to the team. And yeah, Ravalawa obviously is a tremendous player and he's going to get his. And I think Artie will look back on this game as a really big learning experience going up against one of the most physical wingers in the competition.
Now, John, I wanted to ask you about the first half, because we seemed to have all that early momentum and then it disappeared, probably halfway through that first half. Now, it probably came when Cardi, who scored the most amazing try, just completely bamboozled the defence to get an individual try there, but he pushed a pass.
Yeah.
Early in the tackle count, around about the 20-metre mark, and then the Dragons were able to take advantage, get downfield, and they got their first try on the board.
It was a case of Bryce Giveth and Bryce Takeoff, wasn't it?
Oh, the party giveth, the party taketh.
Between the offload and then I think before half time he went out of the line on the last to try and trap the ball off his foot, and it led to a fresh set for the Dragons to let them score ahead of that break or oranges. So, yeah, look, it's not the first time this season we've started red hot inside the first 10, 12, 15 minutes and then sort of gotten a bit too loose, you know, gone for that pass or that offload that's just not on.
And I was going to ask you about that. Do we get overconfident? Do we get away from a game plan? What do you think that it is?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going away from the game plan. That's without a doubt for mine. I think it's a case of you sort of sense blood in the water and you think that if you can get that extra try, that extra break, you're going to really, you know, put them to the sword, break the back, break the spirits. And unfortunately, the reverse can also be true. You open the door for them, keep it ajar to come back into the contest. So that was the case here today, where the Dragons were rattled badly after those first two tries, but then a sequence of errors, which again, I don't know how we got to 83% completion on the back of those errors, but it opened the door for the Dragons and they took the opportunities, taking the lead into half time.
Yeah, I think it was that sense of smelling blood in the water and drifting away from a game plan, because we know that what BA wants is the building up of pressure, the physical contact, and as soon as we get into that sort of play, we go straight away from the physical contact. We go away from building up pressure. And I think it was at that point that the Dragons started to win the middle, because we weren't forcing the play through the middle. We weren't winning the middle. We were taking the game away from the middle, but they came back at us through there, got a lot of territory, then just pushed it to their right, our left, and kept going to that well with Ravalawa.
Exactly. And yeah, look, going back on the tape for this one, the team will be disappointed with the opportunities they gave the Dragons. This was very much a case of, like you said, you could put the foot on the throat, really ground them out, and taking that game at half time just on the back of possession and territory. Instead, we went the easy route, and the easy route made it the hard route. It's like that counterintuitive sort of thing. By going for the easy, flashy option, you end up making it more difficult for yourself in the long run.
Okay, so the second half didn't start too well. The Dragons got out to that 20-10 lead, courtesy of Ravalawa. So it didn't look as if the swapping of the wings between Sean Russell and Artie was going to work out. It didn't seem to make any difference. What went right from there? Because it felt like things were still going wrong, but obviously something started to go right for us.
It's the same thing that's happened, I suppose, most of the season, to be honest, outside of the Warriors game, which we were undermanned, and then more recently the Melbourne Storm game, where we just played a very ordinary brand of football. But consistently in the final quarter of play, the team either comes to life or starts to outlast their opposition. And I think we saw it again today, where the Eels just finished stronger than the Dragons. They played outside the first 10 minutes. I'm going to say 50 minutes of pretty subpar football. But in that final 20, 15 minutes, things started to click a bit more. They just came over the Dragons stronger, and we saw that. Mojo just got involved with his kicking game. Gufferson started popping up. We saw Ryan Madison become a factor around the middle with his ability to play at the line, finding Junior Barlaw, who I thought actually had a pretty good game, all things considering. And yeah, just again, we finish games generally stronger than our opponents, but we're not always in a position to win the games from that, particular juncture.
Yeah, I think, the main thing that concerned me at the end was when we were leading by 6 points and we had possession right in front of the post with
Ryan
about
Madison offload, yeah.
About 3 minutes to go, and Matto went for that really speculative offload on tackle 2 right in front of the posts, when it looked like maybe the team was going to set up for the field goal
That is training drill situation stuff, isn't it? It's just take your 5 tackles to set up the kick. If you want to be a little bit adventurous in your first few tackles in terms of going for a try, okay, but not forcing an offload where it's not on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to make a bit of a shout out to someone here. See if he might join us up here for a couple of words. Fletch. Yeah, the head spun around really quickly. Fletch has his own podcast. He's a really keen young Parramatta Eels supporter. Welcome, Fletch, to the microphone, everybody. We've got him when he's just had a mouthful of pizza and he wasn't expecting this. So, Fletch, we've got a few questions. We want to get your takes on things today and maybe what the talking points are going to be for the Electric podcast from during the week. First of all, what did you make of Arthur Miller-Stevens' debut today?
I thought he was good for the first 50 minutes, and then just when we switched Sean Russell and Mark Miller-Stevens around, I think he wasn't really training with Will that week, and he just got confused for the first, and then he just eased into it and just did his job.
I'll get you to get right to the microphone or hold it, or even hold it for yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, that's, if it's not too heavy. What about that first half? What was concerning you in the first half where we were down on points and seemed to be backpedaling in the game?
It's probably the only consistent thing in this Parramatta team is the left edge defence. It's just not on. It's just not on.
So what do you think it is? Do you think they're not communicating to each other? Is it a matter of maybe individuals not doing their job?
It was mainly Miller-Stevens just coming in too early. Like Brown and Simonson had their man, and then he just came in like what Wonga Blake was doing last week.
Okay, so he started off quite well defensively, Artie. He put a tackle on Ravalawa, which took him out into touch. What's your take on his future at the club?
Well, he's better than Wonga Blake, so I'd keep him.
You know, sometimes the truth does come out maybe a little bit harshly, but I think we can all acknowledge that at the moment Wonga's headspace isn't quite what it was in the past. That he's not the player that he was in the past. Yeah. We hope that he can find that form when he moves on to another club next year and extend his rugby league career further. Looking ahead, Fletch, we got the win. How would you sum up the win?
Suspenseful, frustrating, confusing.
And what's going to need to change next week to get the win over the Broncos?
Headspace. We just need to complete our sets, not try and push the pass all the time, try and get in the grind. So,
were we looking for easy options, do you think, today, for shortcuts?
Yeah, after we got, I think, 10-0 up, we just tried to just beat them with speed and pace out on the wings. We didn't try and just get in the grind, hold them out. They just tried to spread it the whole time.
Okay, now on the Electric podcast this week, mate, what's going to be your main talking point for all your listeners?
Why Parramatta frustrates me.
Okay, everyone, round of applause for Fletch. That comment could be everyone's topic for the week, how Parramatta can frustrate us. But as I said, when you think the start of the day is, you've got to get those 2 points. At the end of the day, they got the 2 points. We mightn't have liked how it was achieved, but the fact was it was achieved. So we'll take that as a positive. Moving forward, John, I'm going to pose the same question to you. What do the Eels need to do to get a win against a Broncos team that seems to have strike power all over it, that is looking like they will genuinely challenge for the premiership, when we look like we are genuinely struggling to make the top 8?
I will say, generally speaking, Parramatta are pretty good at playing up to their opposition. So if we're playing the Penrith Panthers, we tend to match their intensity in the regular season. I hope the same is true for the Brisbane Broncos. We met them in Darwin earlier this year, which we know those torrid conditions can really bring out the worst in teams. Even then, we nearly ran them down despite a non-sim bin on Payne Haas for a hip drop tackle. Speaking of Payne, I think it's trying to stifle that middle, Patrick Carrigan, Payne Haas, Tom Flegler. They've got such a strike rotation of props, and I know we're going to be without Reagan Campbell-Gillard, which will make things difficult, but the Parramatta Eels have to find a way to impact the ruck if they're going to try and negate the ability of the Broncos backline, which, you know, you're hard-pressed to find a better backline in the competition. Starting at fullback with Reece Walsh, who's just electric, and then a series of almost prototypical athletic centres and wingers. They're all, giants that can move and finish with aplomb. So trying to mitigate all of that starting in the middle is going to be the key factor. And yeah, the reality is it's going to be a difficult task.
Okay, just on a couple of other things before we do our 3-2-1s for the NRL. Tough loss again for our NRLW team, but brighter times ahead because I believe Rachel Pearson will be available to be selected this week, and that's going to be a really crucial in at halfback. Unfortunately, we saw Kennedy Cherrington dismissed from the field today. She's a clean skin. Or so she tells me. She's a clean skin, and so she hasn't got a record that's going to maybe increase any penalty that they're looking at. So how much of a turnaround can we expect with the inclusion of Rachel Pearson and maybe as well Elsie Albert?
Oh, there's no doubt they're going to make a significant difference. There are two marquee recruits. One is going to be the organiser, the field marshal for the team in the halves, and the other is going to be one of the two pillars in the forward pack alongside Kennedy. And obviously Kennedy's going to have a stint on the sideline pending what the judiciary and the match review committee say. And I hope that there is some scalability of the punishments, given that NRL punishments are built on that 24, 25-week season. NRLW season, only 9 weeks. You'd think that they would scale punishments to fit the relative to...
So what are you thinking for Kennedy, 1 or 2 weeks? Not 3 or 4?
I would hope that, 2 to 3 at tops, but it depends. You're pulling numbers out of a hat when it comes to the MRC sometimes.
Yeah, and I think what John's trying to explain there is in a 9-game season with the NRLW, if you cop a 4-game suspension, that's about the same as in the NRL being suspended for half a season. So there has to be that scalability at play there. And look, you thought there was an improved performance today?
The scoreboard doesn't reflect it, but I thought that the effort was much improved this week. I thought there was more aggression in defence and line speed.
I was going to say the line speed is the big thing that we're really looking for improvement.
And the score was 18-4 when Kennedy got sent. And from there, obviously, Newcastle piled on some points, but that was in the second half. And they gave themselves like a real chance to be in the contest today. They had a couple opportunities in the first half they couldn't convert. It allowed Newcastle to jump out to a lead. But yeah, I really think the effort was much better. And I think there are some options in this team in attack. You talk about winger Zoe Fay, centre/fullback Cassie Toihiku, Abby Church, who went off injured today. They've got some legitimate strike in the back line. So just finding a way to feature them with Pearson back, I think will give them opportunities moving forwards.
Yeah, and speaking about other Eels results.
Yeah, New South Wales Cup, good win today, 60s.
Yeah, so they were playing up at Kellyville today. So Parramatta's New South Wales Cup team won 44-28. A couple of late tries to the Dragons made it a bit more respectable from their perspective, but you had 3 tries from Dejan Arce today. So he's moved back to New South Wales Cup. He got 3 tries today. We also had a try to Wonga Blake, Lockie Blackburn, Chris Tupu, Jordan Rankin, and Jordan Rankin kicking 6 goals to give that 44 points.
And he wasn't on the scorer sheet, but Brendan Hands had a good game playing in the halves.
Yeah, and then yesterday was another win for the Eels, and this was an important win for the Parramatta Eels in the Jersey Flegg competition because they were sitting in 7th place before this weekend. They were playing the 6th place Dragons, and it's only a top 5 in the Jersey Flegg. They beat the Dragons to the tune of 48 points to 10, a really, really big win over at Parramatta. It's a pity that we can't get to see them, as curtain raisers here anymore, or so it seems. But 48-10 was a great result. We had 2 tries to Ethan Martin, 2 tries to Matthew Arthur, 2 tries to Matt Komalafi, try to Josh Lynn, try to Brock Parker, try to Ethan Sanders. So really big win. That moves them up to 6th place. And they're still in the run for finals football. A couple of results maybe have to go their way, but if they keep winning...
Technically speaking, their destiny is in their own hands for the most part. they've got the best for and against out of the 3 teams vying for that 5th spot, being themselves, St George, who they played yesterday, and the Melbourne Storm, who they played last week and won. So if they keep winning and winning well, they'll make it. The problem is they've got a couple of big roadblocks in the way in the Sydney Roosters and the Penrith Panthers, but they're finding their stride, they're hitting form. The team is now the core of that SG Ball Premiership winning side from earlier this year, and those boys that have come up into the under-21s from the under-19s are really finding their own form and really taking control of both their individual responsibilities and the team responsibilities.
Yes, so for people that aren't aware, Parramatta won the SG Ball competition earlier this year. A lot of the boys that are in the SG Ball have transitioned up to the Jersey Flegg. All those combinations, spine combinations, they're really starting to have their impact in that grade. They're notching up really good wins, really good victories, playing a good brand of football, even when they lost to the first place Roosters recently.
Pushed them massively.
They really pushed the Roosters. They've still got another game against them, unfortunately, when it comes to the draw. But anyway, so we actually had 3 grades of wins for the Eels. Wasn't it good in the old days when you could say the Eels won all 3 grades? Well, they got all 3 grades today, so this weekend. So we'll have that as a positive for this round. John, your 3-2-1 for today.
It's always tough coming out of a game like this where you sort of steal the win and you feel like you left a lot of good football on the field not, utilised. Jeez.
It is a tough choice because you look at the performers and there might be something that they did that you didn't like as well.
I'm going to go with the big man. He scored a critical try. He had a big game on both sides of the ball, 180 metres on the ground, and I think 32 odd tackles, just 1 miss. And I'll go with one of our captains, Junior Barlaw.
Okay. Look, I think I probably have to agree with you. I'll go the 3 with Junior Barlaw because, I mean, he was one of our better performers last week as well. And I think from here it starts to get difficult for who we select.
It is very, very difficult. You got, Dylan Brown came back and I thought he had some nice involvements. Had that left edge humming early on in the game. Had the try assist for the go-ahead try with Bryce Cartwright. That crossfield kick that got tipped back to Bryce or tipped down by a Dragon to Bryce. He'd probably be in the mix for 2 points. Bryce himself, a lot of good, a lot of bad. I don't know if you can warrant a 2-point selection on that, mate. Maybe I would keep it simple and just go Dylan, who I thought came back and still has plenty to owe the club and the team in the coming weeks. Going to need more big performances, but he came back, made some big defensive tackles, made a couple of really important offensive plays.
I feel conflicted with the 2 points because, as you know, I like to use my metric is, could the Eels have won without a best on-field player? And I don't believe that they could have won today without Junior. And as crazy as this may seem, because he made some mistakes, I don't think the Eels win today without Bryce Cartwright.
Yeah, that's fair. It just comes down to the balance of things, doesn't it? If you think that the negatives offset the positives or the positives outweigh the negatives, and I can definitely see the positives outweighing the negatives.
So I'm giving him 2 points. The 1 point, Mitch Moses really was so much effort today, but it seemed that they had the answer for him all day. But again, I think I have to go for him for the 1 point today, and it feels like we could have. No, I don't think we would have won without Mitch Moses today. I think his kicking game was essential, and I think the fact that he did keep asking questions, they had answers, but he never stopped pushing what he was trying to offer today. So I'm going to go 1 point for Mitch Moses.
Ooh. Maybe I just have to jump on the Bryce Cartwright bandwagon for the 1 point. He definitely sparked some fantastic patches of play early on, and even after that period of errors in that sort of second quarter, he sort of straightened up his game and got back to playing a bit more fundamentally strong in the second half. So he was definitely, like you said, a player that we don't win without, and the fact that he scored the go-ahead try was critical.
Okay, well, that just about wraps things up, everyone. Just before we go, we also want to give an acknowledgement to our former players. They had their reunion this weekend. It was a big weekend event yesterday and today. You all got to see them out on the field when they did that lap of honour before the first grade game. There's a wonderful organisation called the Blue and Gold Alliance. They're a group of former players and officials, and their goal is to bring back every single former Parramatta player back to Parramatta next year for one big day, for one big event. And I think it's a challenge. It's a worthwhile challenge. They're a not-for-profit organisation. They want to help as many of the former players as they can. They want to bring players together because of how important it is. So a bit of acknowledgement for them. I hope you enjoyed being able to give them a round of applause as they walked around the field. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you, John, for today. And go you mighty Eels.